Hello, everyone. Welcome to the National Museum of the American Indians program series, Youth in Action, Conversations About Our Future. Thank you for joining us. Youth in Action features young Native activists and changemakers from across the Western Hemisphere who are working towards equity and social justice for Indigenous peoples. My name is Anna Nielsen, and I'm an educator at the museum. Before we begin, we want to take a moment to gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. This episode explores the power of music. We'll hear from Indigenous youth who are using hip-hop to assert their sovereignty and dismantle stereotypes. We'll learn how they meld hip-hop and Indigenous beats and rhymes to construct their own narratives and create social change. To facilitate this conversation, we're excited to introduce our moderator, Kyle Mays. Kyle is an Afro-Indigenous writer and scholar of U.S. history, urban studies, race relations, and contemporary popular culture. He serves as an assistant professor of history, African American studies, and American Indian studies at the University of California, Los Angeles. He is the author of Hip Hop Beats, Indigenous Rhymes, Modernity, and Hip Hop in Indigenous North America. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Anna. And so today we're going to really be exploring why Indigenous hip hop, the importance of Indigenous representation with shows like Reservation Dogs and Rutherford Falls, has helped us begin to move beyond narratives of cultural appropriation and also demonstrate multiple representations. Indigenous creatives now have power over their own narratives. Let me first introduce Bazille. He is a rap artist and poet from the Crow Creek, Dakota, and Cheyenne River Lakota tribes. An alum of the University of Pennsylvania, Bazille graduated in 2015 with a bachelor's in psychology. He currently runs Onhaun Waste Studios, translating to Good Healing Sound of Music, a name gifted by CJ General Thunderhawk, where he provides access to recording and production for community members and allies around central South Dakota. The studio was supported in 2019 by First Peoples Fund through the Cultural Capital Fellowship. His recent solo work continued to involve collaboration with artists such as Tani Gordon Art, Ray Rockboy Janis, Maniac, The Supernatural, The Derelict, and more, with his most recent being Taku Snin, Nobody or Nothing in Lakota, that features artwork by Ray.
Bazille chante washte na nape chizapero. Hello everybody, my name is Bazille. Greet you with a warm heart and a good handshake. Mia malakota na damakota, lakota and Dakota.
Now, second, let me introduce Mato Wayuhi, who is an Oglala Lakota multidisciplinary artist originally from South Dakota. He works in film and television, both as a producer and musical composer, as well as writing his own music, garnering acclaim from NPR, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. Most notably, Mato is a composer for the award-winning FX Hulu series Reservation Dogs. Mato's music is everything that good Indigenous art is right now. We are in a renaissance, and his music speaks directly to that movement. It's unapologetic, it doesn't need permission to exist, and it's made with an urgency to move us into a new era, says Sterling Harjo, creator and showrunner of Reservation Dogs. A recent graduate of the University of Southern California, Mato continues to play and work in Los Angeles, spending parts of his summers in attending ceremonies and bumming around with family back home.
Amidakuyepi Mato Wayuhi Machiapelo, Naha Iuha Chante Washtea Napre Chiuzapelo, Nakun Oyate Mitawa Hena Ocheti Shakoi Na Titwa Hechetuelo.
We are now going to move into the Q&A portion of the program. So let's begin with the first question. I'll begin with Mato. When did you first fall in love with hip hop? And who were your hip hop role models?
Hey everybody. I first fell in love with hip hop. I mean, there wasn't really a time. I think I was just kind of born into a lot of the aspects of the culture with who raised me. And so I remember earliest memories listening to a lot of, Ja Rule and Jennifer Lopez and Ashanti and all these different people. And my older cousins and my oldest sister were, they informed a lot of what I listened to. And so, and my dad as well, he was a huge Ice Cube fan and everything. So I think when you're younger, you're so absorbent to different things. And so, yeah, I mean, I just loved the culture of it. And also, I feel like just from a technical standpoint, I mean, I was so attracted to the sound of rapping and the rhythm of it and the cadences and all these different pockets. I didn't even know what that meant when I was growing up, but I loved the way rappers would put words into rhythm. And I just thought that was I was so enticed by that. So yeah, it was kind of just part of my DNA for as long as I can remember. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. Ice Cube is certainly another sort of legend in the game. So, Bazille, I'm going to ask you the same question. When did you first fall in love with hip hop, and who were some of your hip hop role models? Who influenced you to get into the rap game?
For me, it's definitely not lost on me that within the months of my birth and even looking at my mother's pregnancy and into my childhood of that whole area of time it starts in 93. And so in my kind of everyday state of being, I'm already exposed to, Doggy Style had released by Snoop Dogg, I believe either before or after, same with The Chronic and a lot of what Death Row would do and Bad Boy and just that kind of mega time for hip hop in the early 90s to mid 90s. And then to see it transform, as I get older and I'm listening to it on my own, even though it had been with parents at first, because my mom was listening to R&B, my dad was listening to heavy metal, but they both kind of came in together and both had CDs of, this music and tapes. Getting to enjoy it on my own, I would kind of feel, different connections to it, granted with some translation work. And it just kind of felt like the only thing I could really understand the world with. So growing up, I tried to get into, drumming and different ways of like singing, but it just didn't work for me. And I'd even get teased for like my voice and stuff. Hip hop was kind of that thing I could fall back on and lean to just for understanding and getting along in that way. And then plus, there was already people like Maniac the Supernatural, Night Shield. Of course, we can say Lightfoot and stuff like that, but people within South Dakota who I was around and even related to, Genocide, who was making beats, Zen's an ally out in Rapid City, and then like probably my biggest role model in hip hop period, the Derelict, aka Shari the Vagabond. I look up to all of them guys because they're the real legends to me, and what they've done and what they continue to do is, even to this day, that's what kind of drives and motivates me to keep doing what I do.
Thank you for that. And I like how you created a genealogy of Indigenous hip hop artists who has been influential. And so I'm going to go back to you or continue with you, Bazille. So how does your Indigenous culture influence your work, your art?
I guess to continue on that, this native art genealogy you're talking about, for me, I look up to someone like Oscar Howe, not just because I'm Dakota too, or because I'm, quasi, related, but even though I'm in a different medium, I understand what he's saying when he says he approaches things with a Dakota aesthetic. And what that means is it's not necessarily like, yeah, there's things in there you could identify or say, that's native, but it's more in my walk and my everyday state of being. For me, I don't kind of purposefully seek out to like, oh, this is a native sound, I need to shoehorn it into a thing. It's more for me, this is how I live every day. And a big part of hip hop music and rap and everything is authenticity and that being real to self. So for me, it influences my work, and that it is my approach, and that my ways of belief are that things are connected. My value of nature, my value of people over money, my value of loyalty and love over things like money and greed. That's all for me a Dakota innate thing. So the things that I rap about, the way that I rap about it, and then even the way that I make my beats or choose my beats, if I'm working with another producer, it's all from that Dakota Lakota aesthetic in me. And it may not seem like that all the way, but it always comes from that core of my experience living in the place that I lived, coming from who I come from in my specific setting, which is even different from people next door to me who I grew up with, you know? So it's kind of all wound up in that, not just the history, but the current struggle and the current, you know, stuff that goes on. So it's all there in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. And I always tell people it doesn't matter what an indigenous person is doing. If they're doing it, it's now indigenous.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that. Yeah. So Mato, how does your indigenous culture influence your work, your production of expressive culture?
I think similar to what Bazille was saying, you know, I think anything we do is innately the culture that raised us and the people that informed us. And I think a lot of the ways, to me, you know, rap is reporting, kind of just reporting what is going on in your life and the events that have taken place and the experiences that you've had. And so, yeah, I think, I mean, through and through, my Lakota culture is so, it informs me so much from a musical standpoint. And I think, you know, what I'm really grateful for, even in this generation, is that we've had a lot of creative autonomy in the past couple of years. You mentioned earlier about these different shows that are being bred that give credence to our people and our culture and showing our humanity in a lot of ways. And so I think what's really great about that from a musical standpoint is that I feel like, and I think Bazille can probably relate to this, I feel like I have a lot of freedom to express the individuality of our culture and the uniqueness of it. And that inherently kind of creates more of a collective effort of expression and creativity. And it's nice because we can operate outside the lens of people's expectations of indigenous artists. You know, I think to all Native artists, I would say Native art is a completely, you know, self-defined term. And it's there's no paradigm anymore, which I think is really great because I think for a while, you know, throughout the 20th century, there was always that kind of ethnographic approach to Native art. People were saying, oh, like, what is it? They would have a set definition. And so, you know, in this day and age, I'm really grateful to be able to kind of be funky and be different and be unique and have a different style. And yeah, and a lot of the, I think, traditional values of Lakota culture come through in my music, similar to what Bazille said about family and authenticity and, you know, humility and love, and also giving room to have those sort of, you know, I guess, just finite emotions like romance and anger and things like that, kind of giving myself a full palette. But yeah, those are some of the ways that my culture influences my work.
Thank you. And queer Black feminist Audre Lorde wrote a fantastic essay called Uses of Anger. And anger is just a normal emotion like any other sort of emotion. So I'm glad you said that.
I've read that. That's a good one.
Right? Whenever I need to write, I'm sticking with that one. So with that, and Mato, I'm going to stick with you here. If there were 3 words that would describe your unique approach to hip hop, what would you say and why?
I feel like for me personally, I think it'd probably be like, you know, it's probably perspective, influence, and output. I think, you know, just perspective of who I am from an identity standpoint. I think that's really important to explore those different things, whether it be, you know, race, sexuality, any of these different positionality, all these different things. And so I think that's something I pride myself off of. And also, you know, I think just from a kind of a technical standpoint, I'm not a trained musician at all. Like I didn't grow up, I can't read music or anything my mind is I have monkey mind, what they call in Buddhism. I cannot pay attention to anything. It's everywhere. But so I think that is kind of, I think I come into music with a lot of, I don't know if it's naivety as much as it is just curiosity, but I don't have a lot of rules for what I do. I just kind of let the feeling take over. And I would say, influence, just who informs me as an artist. I think that's something which is really, I think it's such a privilege for Indigenous artists, the influence that we have, because we have such a tie to heritage. And as we know, with a lot of hip hop in general, it was kind of creating the heritage, because so much of the, originators, their heritage and their history was taken from them. And so I think that is a really unique, blessing that we have as Indigenous artists, is we can kind of tap into that ancestry if we so choose. And then output, I mean, we're getting into like the commerce of hip hop, but I don't personally, like, I'm very regimented. I really love, projects. I love concepts. I love albums. I love the rollout. I love building worlds. I love Easter eggs. I love all those little things. And so it can be kind of, it can be counterintuitive in a way, especially in this day and age with, releasing things all the time and kind of creating this passive fan base and stuff. I think that's great. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think I admire artists. I sometimes wish I could be that type of artist that releases singles, like every week and things like that. But I can't. I need to work within the project, based approach. And so I really love doing that. I love creating albums. I like disappearing for a while and coming back and having a little show and tell presentation. And also, I think just output too is with scoring. I think that's something unique that I can do that I didn't even think that I would ever do. But I'm really grateful that I'm able to, contribute to these different films. And I think so many different hip hop artists and just musicians in general think so visually. And so it's really, I'm really, really grateful to be able to actualize those efforts and to contribute my music to the screen. So yeah, I think those are some of the different words that describe me.
Thank you. Bazille, so same question to you. There are 3 words that could describe your unique approach to hip hop. What would you say and why?
I think for me, I relate to a lot of what Mato just said, but I think for me, it's I'm a Dakushni Mie. I am no one. I'm nobody. That's 3, I guess. Dakushni Mie. Just because, to go back to this approach of mine, like how I handle everything, is I'm nobody. I'm nobody. I grew up, my dad was one of the first in his family to go off into college, but he came from a rough background. His stepdad, who kind of raised him for the most part of his life, killed himself in front of the rest of the family. My mom, she had no easy way of going either, and coming from a background where, amongst all of her siblings, she had a different dad and faced a lot of abandonment and neglect. And I grew up conscious of all of that because they granted me with that. And in that sense, growing up, being with my dad as he's going through college, right? I'm meeting doctors, lawyers, PhDs, professors, but then I'm also walking in the houses with specific sense, if I can say that, and people of a different way of living, as well as people who are positive and medicine and people who get no money every year and who are broke. And I've been in many houses, some that maybe others wouldn't bring their kids. But through that, I kind of learned to listen to everybody. It's kind of like a salad bar. Everybody has a bit of story and value and beauty in them. And on the res, there's a lot of beauty that's distorted with generations and generations of psychological trauma. But that doesn't take away from the fact that all of those people who are struggling, or who we like to box in as being in this place of, victimization, they still have power and strength and lessons to teach and things that we need to listen to. And in terms of how I put that in my music is, I collaborate with anybody. I I extend my hand to give free beats to people who maybe some of them can even afford it, but I just give it anyway. In terms of my albums and stuff, I released up until like 2016, all of my albums were free, and it was over like 15 to 20 my production, recording. I'm not making any money off of it, just because to me, I'm nobody. This is my way of living. This is, if I stop rapping, if I stop making a beat, if I stop thinking about the next album, the next thing, I honestly feel like I'm gonna die. That's how I feel. That's literally every day I walk around and I'm thinking, you know, if I stop doing this, what is it for me? Because I feel like this is just who I am and what I do. And as I look back into the old ways and that belief of Ducheneaux, which is, you know, I believe in that fool's crow teaching of making yourself into that hollow bone. Well, how do we do that in rap and hip hop when so much of the commercialization and the evolution of it has been material wealth and egocentrism and me, and keeping things secret, you know, these samples or this production knowledge or this rhyming knowledge, that for us, we share our knowledge, we share everything, even, you know, the clothing off our back. So for me, as I approach hip hop and art, you know, having that Ducheneaux album, it really felt like me reclaiming my identity, because I finally finding it of, yeah, that's who I am. I'm nobody. I just like being here. I like recording. I like making music. And I feel like in some instances, I feel alone in my passion and excitement about that and how I go about that. I face a lot of people every day who tell me I'm a fool for the way that I go about my business, the way that I handle everything, but it's the only way I know, and it's the only way I feel comfortable living, and I'm happy, you know.
Thank you. That's a word. Thank you for that. And so, Bazille, I'm gonna stick with you here, and ask. And so last year, I saw a talk you gave to youth discussing your different musical influences, going into record stores. So how does your broad knowledge of music impact your own musical creativity? And I see this with both of you all and just indigenous hip hop artists everywhere, and various hip hop artists. They're always into all sorts of music. So how does that impact your own musical creativity?
I think it goes into the Ducheneaux thing, you know, like it's fun for me to find foreign records. I used to go to, like, shout out to Repo Records in Philly, shout out to what was that other place? There's a lot of places. I would just go into the basement even, and they would have 25-cent records that you can just go through the whole basement. Every record's 25 cents. And I would just pick stuff I didn't know. And I'd find, like, you know, Japanese movements of music that reflected 90s commercialism or 80s commercialism, and finding, you know, Korean punk and German prog rock and all of this stuff, and just getting at the core of it and understanding music history. It's like everybody feels something, and we all just have a way of expressing it, and it's all equal in a big way. And if we look at it respectfully enough and geek out over it, we can actually, I feel, uncover a lot about histories of just the world, and not just the history that we read in the black and white, but the history that we feel. You know, how do we feel about this history? How are people coping with this sort of thing? Because often we're using these songs as, you know, protest songs or things to get us through the day, or someone died, so I listen to How Long Will They Mourn Me by Tupac almost every day and think about that person. For me, I feel like just being open to all of these other things, it helps me understand what I want to do in my lane. So, like, for example, Pharoah Sanders, The Creator Has a Master Plan, is one of my favorite compositions ever. It's like 30 minutes long. The way it starts, man, you feel the pain. You feel human pain and sadness and the things going on in the world. And as it goes along, man, you just want to cry, because he slowly soothes you into reminding you Creator has a master plan. And in my line of work, I'm like, okay, how do I get that same emotion that he's doing with the sax and the composition and the percussion as a rap, as a beat? how can I bring that same energy that's true to my story and what I feel, you know? And those ideas for me wouldn't come if I wasn't, you know, being a fan of everything. So keeping myself humble to where everything I see, I'm like a sponge. I watch Sammy the Bull on YouTube, and I'm like interpreting his stories. I watch, um, you know, Boulevard Nights, an old movie about like gang stuff in California, and that, you know, triggers, you know, this brother dynamic that I had with my brother who recently passed away. So it's you know, it's all art that, to me, if you just open yourself to it, it can heal you in so many ways. But what's unfortunate is we got to break out of this kind of, I don't know if it's American idealism, but it's this thing that prevents us from enjoying the creativity and celebrating it and honoring it and remembering it, just even if you don't understand what it is at first, you know.
Yeah. Thank you. And that, you're right. You have to be open to that sort of thing. So absolutely. Mato, so you've composed music for Reservation Dogs. What was that like? Or what is that like?
It's pretty cool. It's been fun. Yeah, I we're starting season 2 right now, and it was great. Like I said before, I did not know I was going to be doing this in my life. I kind of just got, you know, uh, blessed with the opportunity. I guess I was in film school at the University of Southern California, and I just got asked randomly by my friend Alex. He said, "Do you want to score this?" I was like, "Okay." And yeah, so it's been really fun with Reservation Dogs. You know, I think that show in itself is very revolutionary in how it diverts a lot of stereotypes, and it turns inward and creates a satire out of it. I think with my own personal music, I've been on that same mission. My first album, Part Time Indian, I'm sampling a lot of these different things and kind of, you know, just queering it a little bit, making it a little different, showing how we're you know very self-reflective and self-aware, and also creating new meaning with different, you know, symbolism and different motifs that a lot of indigenous culture is aligned to. And so I think with the show, it's just kind of an extension of that. Sterling and I were pretty close, and he's been a mentor to me in a lot of different ways. And we have a lot of conversations about that, about what is the expectation, how can we avert that, how can we make it different. And so it's been really fun, and it's wild. I've been in a lot of different circles with composers and whatnot, and a lot of folks who are non-native are very, very dumbfounded by what makes a score native, because to them it's, you know, three things. It's like a rattle, a flute, and a drum. And
Yeah.
it's like we are not doing that. Like, we don't make music like that. Like, that's our traditional stuff. But you know, when it comes to the cinematic approach, I mean, I feel like a lot of natives have such a literacy for film and TV because we're such pop culture babies in a lot of ways. We're growing up with these different movies, and you know, I remember watching Boys in the Hood when I was like 4, and Friday when I was like 3 or 4. Like, those movies were like those were they informed me so much. And so I think with Reservation Dogs, I mean, it's been so fun. The show is so fun, and it's such an extension of my own musical taste, and it's also challenging me. You know, I'm not from Oklahoma. I don't know blues and everything like that, but it's been really fun to kind of extend myself with that. And yeah, I mean, it's been super fun. I mean, I'm loving it. I'm loving getting involved in different scoring opportunities. And to me, you know, speaking on Bazille's thoughts on kind of this communal approach, I love, since I can't really, you know, professionally play any of these
Yeah.
instruments. A lot of the time it's me reaching out to folks. So it's me, oh, I know this great flutist, or oh, I know this great harpist, or I know this great guitarist. And so bringing them in and kind of operating really as a composer and as an arranger. I really love that stuff. That's how my mind
That's
works. I'm always organizing things, and that to me is super fun. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
So I see both of y'all just always putting the homies on. I appreciate that. It's
Gotcha.
important.
Yeah, you got to.
And so, Mato, a second sort of follow up question. What is the importance of having Indigenous musicians be a part of music composition and film and television?
I think the importance of it, I mean, we if you look at the kind of the parallels between, I guess, just colonization and the invention of even just motion picture, there's a tandem. It's really interesting, and I studied this in film school. And if I am ever to get my PhD, that's what I would study very specifically, kind of like native film and media. And but it goes in tandem from the the late 1800s when motion picture started, and the massacre at Wounded Knee, which was in 1890. And so there's all these different parallels to when some of the first literally moving picture were of natives dancing. And so it's really interesting. It's created such this strange relationship with through the lens of whiteness and imperialism with who and what natives are. And so I mean it's been a push and pull. Jesus has been a push and pull for these past 100 or so years in terms of what is rightful representation, who we are, why we are. There's been so much misrepresentation, and so I feel like in a lot of ways what Bazille and I are doing, just with music and media, and what so many other Native artists are doing, what they have been doing behind the scenes, and what they continue to do, is kind of mending that representation. It's putting bandages over all of the damage that was done. A couple of years ago, it was my senior year at USC, and we actually held a lot of protests to get this John Wayne exhibit removed from USC, from the whole film quarters. And not to say, I think there's a time and place to respect what was, and to contextualize things. I think there always needs to be this historical contextualization of what those John Wayne movies meant. And I know a lot of elders who love those films, and that's a different conversation. But it's important to show us who we are now. And so I think with that protest and just what we do in general is to create sort of creative autonomy to where we can very aptly represent ourselves and show that it's ever changing, and show that it's flawed and frayed, and to show that we don't have this stoicism that people align us with. And so I think it's super important representation. I feel like it's such an important thing for opportunity for folks, and also just these kinship networks that can be created out through representation, and the confidence levels that go up in Native youth to see themselves on screen, true representations of themselves. I just think it's so important.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's certainly a different conversation, but I'm sure we all have elders, even those who grew up in Detroit, who like certain Westerns, and will let that be. So Bazille, how does your art help us challenge and even move beyond stereotypes of Indigenous peoples?
I mean, I hope mine does, right? That I'm challenging that sort of thing, because really, I don't know how exactly it does, other than just my being authentic in it. I can honestly say I've taken licks for how I move, how I make music. I've taken stuff from allies, non-allies, and then even my own people, for the things that I say, the way that I say it, the topics that I bring up. But I do it all from the first part, a place of love, even if there's anger and aggression in it. Sometimes you hear me screaming in a song, but it's all with the intention of showing my perspective, my feelings, my outlook, along with reporting on what I see as the reality, and what I might see as some people not seeing, or the thing that I want to bring to the table, or the story that I want to tell, because maybe it emotes something, or maybe the song I want to make just to make it, just to exist. I feel like in doing that, hopefully there's my main goal is, like, I was a Native kid once who, like all of us, had to consolidate this made up two paths of traditional and contemporary, which now I'm glad a lot of us are saying, non-existent. We're all on the same, time is nothing at this point. But growing up, for me, not having people like me that often to maybe be a darker artist or a shadow worker or a type of film. I didn't know about the movie Clear Cut till I was, like a year or two ago. But once I saw that movie and seeing Graham Greene, act like, he's a taxi driver and horrifying, colonizers, it was just so cool to me. And then to see reservation dogs, like if that stuff existed when I was a kid, where would my psyche be at growing up in terms of my confidence, my self-esteem, how I feel about myself, how I feel about my connection to indigeneity, which is myself. So my hope is that just expressing my unique perspective, that maybe I can provide not a voice, but just an ear, a consolidating like verification to some of those people who are going out there mixed up like that, like I was, to find something that helped them understand what they're going through. That can really be my only hope in all of this. And then for those who are looking to challenge, stereotypes of how they see us, hopefully they see me and they realize that some of the things I'm saying are universal, and some of the things that we're all saying and doing are universal. It's just, how much are you going to allow the difference or the unknown block us from connecting,
Yeah, that's so true. So, Mato, I'm going to go to you. How has your art changed from when you first started till now?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think it kind of slinkies. I think it's really different every year, and that's kind of my intent would be to always be learning and unlearning things as much as I can. I think when you get to when you're producing things, with specifically even within a software, like you get in your habits and your tendencies, and you kind of get in this treadmill of tropes that you find yourself doing. And so I think always trying to dismantle that is important to me, and that's how things can change. I think, it's, I don't know, it can just change. I think, the most thing that I try to stay consistent is just kind of reaching into myself and seeing what's there. And but yeah, I mean, things change so much. I feel like it's always evolving, and whether it be starting with the drums first or starting with the melody or sampling and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's always changing. Recently I think I've been, from a lyrical standpoint, I've been changing things up, just trying to challenge myself a little more, and I just always try to surprise myself. I think that's the biggest thing. And yeah, I think also too, something that I tell a lot of younger artists when they ask kind of just the ropes of different things, or how do you score, how do you do these different things. And I think not having an expectation for yourself is really important, for me at least. I can't remember who said it, but someone said, when you're working in a studio or whatever your creative space is letting room for God to come into the room. I guess for us it'd be Tungashila or Dakushkanshkan, or anything, just letting that in the room, letting something greater than you inside of the room to guide you. I think that's really important. Not setting certain expectations. So yeah. But other than that, I'm a weirdo. I'm always changing up different stuff. I'm always trying different things out. I love sampling random things, and I sampled a BMX bike recently. So I'm just doing stuff like that, keeping it fun.
That's awesome. So, Bazille, same question to you. How has your art changed from when you first started up until now?
I'm definitely a DIY artist in terms of how my studio has transformed, and then actually working in studios later on and career and stuff. But I think firstly, it's just the quality of it, and just knowing, how to work with what I'm working with. But one of the things I tell like people who come to the One-Off and Watch Day studio, which is predominantly younger folks and people who haven't recorded, or maybe this is their first time getting into rap, or primarily to the rappers, I'll say, some people will get kind of hung up on perfectionism, and that's good. Like, blessings to that. But sometimes, like, what really worked for me was just putting stuff out there, even if it wasn't perfect, just to get my body moving, and to exercise what I actually want to do, so that way the next one I make can be that much better. And I feel like now, as I'm making projects in the past couple of years, I'm focusing more on specific concepts. Like I do my garden series, where each album is based and themed off of a plant. So the last one was Ghost Plant. Tawny Gordon did the artwork for that. Ducheneaux, with that album, I relate to so much what Mato was saying. We really are, consumers of pop culture, because Ducheneaux was just full of like all of those native movies and movies where a white person was playing a native. I sampled all of those anytime they said nobody or no one. So I enjoy, just kind of like what you're saying, Mato. I enjoy messing with concepts and these different ideas of what can I theme things off of, what's a new way to say this thing or represent myself or my community. So I think over the years, just in how I'm thinking about things, and even in visualizing people receiving them. So I have some ideas for sound installations, down the road that I'm excited to do too.
Yeah, thank you. So let's transition to this particular question, especially for our young people. So colonialism impacts our youth in a variety of forms, right? So we have high rates of youth suicide, drug abuse, and so forth. Can you think of a moment when you overcame something as a young person? What role, if any, did hip hop play in helping you deal with that particular situation? And I'll say with Bazille here.
Okay. It's hard to pinpoint a moment when it's like life. It's like, man, I don't even know where to begin, because basically, in my household, my little brother and I, a lot of the times we were on our own, and we came from good parents, don't get me wrong, who are now like in sobriety and, doing really, really well. And I'm so proud of like my mom and my dad for, the turns around seas making. But back then, me and my brother, we were in households with lots of alcohol, lots of neglect, lots of meth before the big epidemic was being reported. And like going through that as an older brother, my heart always broke for my little brother, because he would literally cry to me sometimes and ask me, how come I'm not loved? Or, why is it always like this? Are we bad? Are we bad people? Because, we can't find a home to be stable or to even live in for just more than a couple months or a year. And we're changing schools and all this stuff. For me, it was like, how do I move past that? And I went back to like survival tactics. I was like, well, when dad was in college, that things were good then. So what if I just go to college, figure out whatever they do there, and make some money for myself, and then me and Taryn, my brother, we can live together, and I'll figure it out that way, because I'm 6 years older than him. And through that, and leaving him with my dad at the time, he ended up facing so much chaos. Like he slept in cars during blizzards on school nights. A lot of things that he didn't tell me till we were adults. And through all of that, for me and him, it was hip hop. Of course, we listen to metal. Like we said, I listen to jazz and everything. But something about hip hop and the fact that it comes from such a hurt, oppressed place, and that it's so vulnerable in times. That's why I love Tupac, because you hear it in his voice. You hear the pain. You hear what he's really feeling. I'm hopeless. That's how we felt. And so just to hear that and to relate to it and to keep moving with it. And then I got to give my kudos again to all of the legends that were local, because that was even a further step of, this is what I'm going through. This is who I am. This is someone who's from where I'm from. I listened to that as I went and did my finals, not knowing where I'm going to be next month. I did that as I left from the college and going back to the home and wondering, how am I going to hustle to rent something, or, get us a home, or get my brother off the bedbug mattress on the floor. And even now, through my brother's passing, hip hop is the thing, and even the music that he made is the thing that keeps me going and to have a purpose even today. Because I could have just said, the reason for my resilience is now gone. So what do I do? And right now, the only thing I can do is continue music, and what me and him talked about. So.
Thank
And
you
that
for
all stems from colonialism. Sorry, that all stems from colonialism. I want to explain the whole thing, but yeah, that's all from that. Anytime I look at addiction, all of this stuff going on, I don't get mad at the person who's addicted, even though their decisions are really hurtful or something may be going on, because you got to look back. You got to look at the domino. You can't blame our own people for what is being done to us. And that's what's being propped up. But hip hop also reminds us of what the true origin of those things are too. Sorry.
No, that's true. This is a structural thing that impacts people, and it is the role of settler colonialism to cause those things. And I'm glad that you actually stated that. So, Mato, I'm going to ask you the same thing. A particular moment as a youth, or even now, really, and what role did hip hop play in helping you deal with a particular situation?
Yeah, I think there's a line by Eric Ark Elliott, who's in Flatbush Zombies, in this song called Blacktivist that they had a couple years ago. And I remember I heard it and it stuck with me so deeply. He said, I was a fan of rap before I was a fan of being black. And I thought that was so in line with how I felt about my own indigeneity. I think with a lot of indigenous youth, I think something that we face and that we go through is this, this self-loathing or this self-hatred, and it comes from colonialism. It's this whole mantra of kill the Indian, save the man. It's a lot of this anti-love for ourselves and not feeling like we can be ourselves and everything. So I feel like for me, I mean, hip hop was a conduit to love myself and to love the culture that raised me. Because when you face the microphone or you face what it is that you're going to say, what are you going to say? You're going to say things about yourself and who you represent and why you represent them and everything. So I was really grateful for that in hip hop. And too, just from kind of a system standpoint and just from a broader stroke, I think I think hip hop itself is bred out of marginalization. That was something Bazille spoke on. And I think there's so many parallels between the Black experience in America and the Indigenous experience. And so I think what's so much of Indigenous culture, when it's appreciated and when it's appropriating hip hop culture, it's because we are so thirsty for any means of expression and any means of community and newness and revitalization. I think so. There were so many moments in my life where I feel like, yeah, hip hop culture saved me and literally saved me, and also just figuratively, and brought the most important people in my life to the forefront. And all of the things I do, I mean, from film and TV and all these different opportunities that I get, it's so funny. The essence and the purity is always back to hip hop. It's always back to this fool could rap very well. And so I'm really grateful for that. And so I owe everything to the music and to these different elements of the culture that raised me. And yeah, I think that was it's something that can be passed down just from a generational standpoint. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And yeah, I learned how to love myself. I learned how to love being Lakota, and I learned how to represent through rapping and through everything about it. So
Thank you for that. And Matt, I'll ask you a particular question, and Bazille, I'll ask you the same question as we begin to wrap up shortly. But do you see any role that Indigenous hip hop can play as far as creating and helping continue in a path towards an Indigenous future?
yeah, I mean, I think the work itself that we do is imagining an Indigenous future. I think as like I said before, I think rap is a lot of reporting, and so it's encapsulating these kind of fleeting moments so folks can take from them in a future setting. And it's just letting people feel less alone. I think it's funny. It's such the irony of, I think the more, and Bazille mentioned this earlier, the more specific and the unique that you get in your rhetoric, it can oftentimes create more of a universal meaning. I think that's so beautiful. That's something I want to know what you had for breakfast this morning. Like, I want to know those very specific things. And I think, you know, there's so much work that needs to be done within our communities, you know, from just, I mean, we could list a lot of different things, and there's always such beautiful things too that we need to celebrate, you know, in tandem with those things. But I think, you know, what I'm, what I can do in my own agency is, yeah, create the utmost form of, you know, expression, and show the possibility of the different things. You know, there's you if you Google composers, none of them look like me. It's a lot of old white people, a lot of old white men. And so I think for
Facts.
me, it's important to expand the lens of possibility just by doing what I do and trying different things. Something my uncle told me, um, who passed away in 2015, but before, you know, he passed, he said, look at all the colors in the world and experience them. And I took that very literal. I said, all right, cool, let's do it. And so, yeah, that's something, I mean, just from a kind of futurism standpoint, that's, I love to think about the possibilities of those different avenues, and to let kids know that it's okay. And then from a, you know, from a literal financial standpoint, to, I think what Bazille is doing is so incredible, and that's so forward thinking, because everything is borrowed that we do. Everything is borrowed from philosophies to our literal DNA to everything. Everything is to the future. And so something, my one of my biggest goals is, yeah, to become, you know, financially stable enough to start investing back into the community and building that infrastructure. And I'm already doing that with different nonprofits now, but I think, you know, there's a grand scheme of, to be able to create, you know, these tangible efforts and to create these different things for the next generation.
Thank you. And Bazille, how do you think hip hop can help us create an indigenous future?
Hmm. I think if both rap artists, hip hop artists, and influencers and the people receiving all of that utilize the the this idea of hustling and being a boss, and what we talk about in some of this music, and make it back to community driven, that same attitude, but to the community. Be a boss in the sense that you help people who are next to you in your home get money when you are. So that way you can enhance the economy there. When you're making an album, reach out not just to a famous indigenous visual artist, but an indigenous visual artist in your community who you know, who's been drawing in his notebook for years and years, but no one's told him anything positive about it yet. I think that indigenous centered / made hip hop can be something that both provides a place and then helps be a catalyst for some of those places in terms of how we think about shows. You mentioned Detroit earlier, and one thing I really appreciate about Detroit is the fact that they have people there. As controversial as it is, they have people there who make sure that local artists from Detroit get put on when someone famous comes in, that they can't just come in and take money from the community and leave and bounce without even caring about who's actually there and who's making the culture survive there, to where things are, you know, kept up in interest. You know, you got to have shows that happen, you know, all in between those main headliner shows. And if the people don't have that regularly, then we start seeing what happens, like in some of the reservations that had, in my own experience, had occurred over the years, of when we started bringing shows back to the community more frequently, you saw people relearn how to be in a concert and how to be supportive of a concert that features people from where they're from. That's a big psychological breakthrough, I think, in terms of community. You know, how do we support each other? How do we value each other in a way that doesn't have to involve or have a prerequisite of American acceptance, of, you know, this hierarchy of, well, you know, so-and-so said, you know, that this guy's good, so now let's all support him. As opposed to, no, we know that this person or that person deserves our support because they're making art and they're showing a connection to our community. So let's share that person's music once in a while more. Or when you as an artist start getting that fame and attention and stuff, start putting your brothers and sisters' names in there. I feel like hip hop, if put with that quote unquote indigenous lens, which would be the only time I ever say that, in terms of how we carry ourselves, then just watch everybody rise up together. Because to quote the great Superman, who Crow hip hop guy, who made a track with Maniac the Supernatural, who's Lakota, back in the early 2000s, which I believe is one of the first times we've seen two, traditionally warring tribes actually work together in something that's modern and positive, right? He said to me just like a year or two ago, he said, I tell everybody, man, there's room for all of us. Just in him saying that, you feel good, because it's like, yeah, there is room for all of us. There can be me, the guy who does this weird thing over here, and my little niche, because that niche is covered. Nobody can tell me, hey, you should make a song that addresses this Native issue, because I can always turn around and say, well, if this person already made a song about it, you should go support them because they made that song. I can make a song about it too, but it might sound a little different. So in terms of like the future of it, I just hope that we all start, of course, loving each other more, but loving ourselves a lot more too. So that way we can find that value and really investing in our community and our people. And it comes from, I think, just how we reframe. We got to unlearn some things. We got to relearn some other things. And I feel like with hip hop, at least for me, it's been a positive way to motivate myself to actually learn it and strive to live that.
Thank you. And as we wrap up, we have about a minute left. And so I'll end with this particular question going to Mato. So what's next for you as you continue in your indigenous hip hop path?
Let's see, what do I got next? Season 2 of Res Dogs, I'll be working on that. And some different scoring gigs coming up. And got some shows throughout the summer too, so that'll be fun. Next week I'm heading to France for the first time. This film that I helped score and produce got into the Cannes Film Festival, and that was actually shot out in Pine Ridge. So that's super cool. I'm really, really excited for that. I've never been to Europe or anything, and just on a nerd lens, I have some stipends to work in an actual professional studio for the first time in my life, because I could never afford that. I've been working out of garages and closets and everything, the struggle, Bazille. And so I'm really excited for that. I'm super, super, super honored to be able to actually work out of a place that was meant for music to be made. So yeah, those are some things for me. I'm really looking forward to those different opportunities.
That's so dope. And Bazille, what's next for you?
I guess the next major thing is We the People is Before. It's my first time, doing the sound design for a stage production, and I'm also performing in it. It's got really an amazing cast, like Monique Mojica, Joy Harjo, like really a lot of people, over 50, I think. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to be doing some work with Cornerstone Theater to kind of, work on going into different communities, which they already do with their theater work and creating theater or community-led theater projects. But I'll be helping on like the sound end of that and trying to teach other people how to do that. Maybe even work in QLab. I mentioned a sound installation before. I'm going to be working on some way, somehow, some mode of action. I want to create a sound installation that takes people inside of mental asylums and gives them noise canceling headphones that will have this maybe a 7-track EP that covers the topics of the asylums and the history and how we were sent there just for praying and going into mental health issues now and IHS and things like that. But otherwise, in terms of like hip hop, I continue to work One Off and Watch Day, and Sold Out 2 with Genocide should be coming out, as well as Ducheneaux, doing work with Rage Rock Boy in terms of his visual art, and Trap TP with Weedco, and the clothing and different things like that. And hopefully just continue to keep performing in the community too. And working with Playing for Change and First Peoples Fund on doing a bigger, music program for the community. So
Thank you. Well, Mato and Bazille, Chibi Gwitch, for chopping it up with us today, and for representing Indigenous hip hop to the fullest. For the audience, Gwitch for attending today's program. And Anna, I'm going to turn it back to you. Gwitch.
Thank you, Kyle, Mato, and Bazille for this incredible conversation and for sharing your knowledge with us. Follow our panelists online to learn more and to support their work. In addition, thank you to everyone that has attended and worked on our Youth in Action series and those who came before us to make this possible. And to explore other ways you can enjoy the National Museum of the American Indian from home, visit us at americanindian.si.edu. Thank you for joining us.